Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. This is not a pleasant portrayal of Jesus. He did not answer her at all. This woman was so far beneath his radar that she did not even register. When the disciples intervene, pleading with him to respond, it's only because the woman is being a nuisance and they want her to go away, so they want Jesus to send her away. When Jesus does respond to them, he does so obliquely. He doesn't actually address the woman. He says, "I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." For the writer, or the one who put together out of a community Matthew's Gospel, Jesus had come primarily for the Jewish people of Israel. Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. The purpose and intention of Jesus' mission was to secure Israel's redemption. Now, you may or may not know that Canaanites were Gentiles. This was reason enough for Jesus' silence and unwillingness to engage. But further compounding the social and religious barrier between them, the Canaanite addressing Jesus was horrendous, a woman. From the outset of this passage, Matthew's Jesus is not concerned for this Gentile woman. Not only is she not part of the divine plan, but she also threatens to intrude across quite established boundaries and expectations. And as we know, this exchange follows immediately the one where Jesus has been berating the Pharisees for their intentional misinterpretation of the commandments of God. The Pharisees, those to whom Jesus has been sent, are choosing correct observance of ritual action and purity rites as being in keeping with the tradition of the elders, and conveniently avoiding the love of God, the costly heart of the law. To put these two together is kind of curious. This accusation of Jewish infidelity with the story of a Gentile Canaanite woman addressing and identifying Jesus by his Jewish messianic title, even though she's not Jewish, might suggest change is afoot. Because although she is not Jewish, this Canaanite woman sees Jesus in that bold sees Jesus way. She discerns that through him, healing and wholeness will come for her in her context. Despite being ignored twice, the woman persists. Kneeling before Jesus, she lays her need down. Vulnerable before him, she says, "Lord, help me." This time Jesus does respond. But far from the compassion we might expect, Jesus reveals a harsh contempt for the woman and her request. He all but calls her a dog. For the predominantly Jewish audience of Matthew's Gospel, this image would be deeply offensive. It is an image used to describe unworthy or hostile outsiders. As far as Matthew's Jesus is concerned, it would be wrong to squander the sustenance of the next generation, the children's food, on those who are outside the boundaries of the household of Israel. The abundance of food that was generated from just 5 loaves and 2 fish a couple of weeks ago is only for those who are deemed worthy to receive it. Still, the woman persists. She is persistent and she is resilient. This is not her need, it is a need for her daughter. She trusts her discernment. She insists that Jesus does have the capacity to respond and to meet her need. She argues that even dogs, even unworthy and hostile outsiders, they are there. They are present at the master's table. They might be dogs, but they know who the master is. The same one who is parent to the children at the table being fed. The Canaanite woman recognizes the life-bringing possibilities present at the table of God, even if only in the crumbs that fall from the table. And then it's weird, like Jesus shifts. It's as if recognition is triggered and he actually sees her for the first time. Jesus responds to the Canaanite woman, still obliquely, it's definitely not personal. Jesus affirms her faith, her great faith, her faith that will make real what she has asked, and instantly her daughter is made well. The Canaanite woman saw Jesus. Despite his prejudice against her, despite his rejection of her, she persisted. She trusted her perception. She knew that what she saw in Jesus would meet her need. And Jesus does change, or at least the choice he makes changes. Perhaps in the woman's need being realized, what she saw in Jesus was also realized in him. But because of my way of thinking, there's something about this interaction between Jesus and the Canaanite woman that makes me curious. The Bible does this to me. If she knew what she wanted and she had enough faith to be healed, why did she need Jesus? Seems a reasonable question. Was that to know that she was seen and her need was heard? Did the transformation happen in that mutual recognition? You see, when we listen to these stories, we assume that we are going to learn something about God from them. Now, tradition asserts that when Jesus was alive on earth, he was fully human. That's reasonable. But the stories that we are hearing are stories that are looking back after Jesus' death and resurrection. The stories that gathered around Jesus that became the Gospels did so within the context of communities. Not randomly, but with an intent to persuade and to point to Jesus as God incarnate. Therefore, almost inevitably, when we are listening to these stories, Jesus might just be a little bit God for us. Just a little bit, maybe a big bit, but not just human, right? So when we listen to today's story and we listen to Jesus and his resistance to hear and to heal an outsider, and that this changes because of the human insistence, goodness me, might that suggest that humans can change and influence God? Perhaps today's gospel is testing what we think is permissible in the God-human relationship. Dare to propose that humans can reveal to God God's boundaries. If so, that top-down dynamic, that power dynamic that we respectfully attributed to God up there, gets untethered, which almost suggests that revelation of God emerges in the interplay of relationship between God and humans. But then again, is today's gospel about changing God or God changing? Or might it be pointing us to consider how God has become ensnared by our habits and in and by our habits? Because we have these two very discrete stories that we hear, and they're read together. Now, that's perhaps an option of the lectionary, but either way, consider their positioning. The questioning of the intent of the faithful practice of the insiders, one story. Then the faith of an outsider whose faithfulness effects healing and wholeness. Now, I think most of us probably consider ourselves as insiders. Would that be fair? We're kind of faithful people. Might it give us cause, therefore, to examine our practices of faith? Like the accused Pharisees, have our habitual practices of faith become performative and self-fulfilling? It is a right and a good thing that we express our faithfulness in familiar form and rhythm. But have we become lulled by this? Have we become immune to that very annoying, in-breaking, living God who bewilders and confounds us and challenges us as to how we are to live? Challenge us and ask us how vulnerable we are willing to be and who our protecting boundaries exclude. I think it's sufficient to say for most of us, and we're going through regular life, what we do regularly sustains us. It's great. But what happens when our usual breaks? When the world around us breaks, and the unexpected breaks, and suddenly our normal way of doing stuff is just not enough. And we might find ourselves like that Canaanite woman crying out, desperate to know we are seen, that our need is heard. And you know what might happen in that moment of our vulnerable, open abandoning? The God we seek and plead for might slip from our constraints. Or maybe we release ourselves to see and encounter the living God. And in such moment, maybe we remember what we may have come to forget, the heart of the incarnation. For us to be fully alive in the presence of God with the terrible, vulnerable riskiness and lack of certainty that that might bring. For then, we enable the life of God to come to life in our world. This is our call. This we are to participate in.